Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Before we begin, I'm going to ask everyone to introduce themselves. I'll begin and then we'll go around the screen to make sure we get everyone. When I call your name, will you please tell us your name and let us know if it's okay to call you by your first name? And if not, please let us know how you would prefer to be addressed. I'll start again. My name is Chris Hasvold. This is my 45th year in the business and have successfully closed several thousand transactions. I serve on the board of our association and have been a longtime member of Professional Standards. I also serve on the board of directors of the California Association of Realtors, where I spent a couple of years on the Standard Forms Committee. That's the group that works with the association attorneys to create all the forms we use in our transactions. As a result of that experience, I also work with attorneys as their expert witness in real estate litigation cases. My partner today is Anita Quillman.
Hello, thanks for being here today. I'm Anita Quillman. My background is 40 plus years as a licensed real estate agent and broker, always involved in Association of Realtors, professional standards, CAR, director for many years, being on committees. So I have a lot of experience closing transactions, managing escrows, closing, etc. And Chris and I both hope to bring to you this experience to help you resolve the dispute today. Thanks for being here and thanks for allowing us to help you.
Hey, I see Nancy in my upper right. Is it okay to call you Nancy?
Absolutely. I am representing the buyer in this transaction, and I am perfectly happy for you to refer to me as Nancy.
Thank you. And I've got Russ as a seller. Is it okay to call you Russ?
Yes, it is. I'm Russ, the seller in this transaction.
Thank you. Jesse, same.
And I'm Jesse. I'm the buyer of the property.
Thank you. So again, we want to thank you for coming here today and choosing mediation as a way to resolve the issues you have with one another. We know it's important to you, and we appreciate your confidence in coming in for some help. We will do our very best to help you reach a resolution if that's what you wish, and we will work as long and as hard as it takes. We usually keep going until someone fires us. Some of you have been in mediation before, and some may have not. But either way, I would like to share some thoughts about the mediation process, what it often looks like, and how it might work today. This is the part of mediation that the lawyers like me to get over as soon as possible because they've heard it all before. So I'll be as brief as I can, but do want to offer some ideas I hope you'll find helpful. Mediation is a conversation about making decisions. That is a very powerful concept. The idea that you all, the ones who have lived the experience that brings us together today, own all of the decision-making power today. Your lawyers will tell you that, and maybe already have told you, that while they are enthusiastic advocates on your behalf, as well they should be, they are not the decision makers. You are. We too are far from being the decision makers, and we will do all we can to support your right and responsibility to make decisions as you see fit during this process. There's an amazing thing that happens when, in the rare instance, people do not reach an agreement in mediation. When that happens, the most knowledgeable people in the world, as far as the situation goes, the people who have lived the experience and know more about it than anyone, turn all of the power to make decisions over to someone, whether a judge, a jury, or perhaps an arbitrator, who knows nothing about you or your situation. In fact, even if you were to take the case to trial and explain all the facts and experience you've had for several days or weeks or even months, the people listening would still not know what you know. And that's really what gives mediation its tremendous following and why it works so well. More than 80% of these sessions reach an agreement on the day of mediation. That's what makes this such a great process. It's the power you have, the most informed people in the world, to make decisions for yourself rather than turning all that power over to someone who doesn't know nearly what you know about your thoughts and experiences. So that's pretty much your job today, to make the best decisions you can using all the help and support you can. Our job, as we see it, is to support your good decision making and to make this as comfortable a process as possible. So how do we go about doing all that? A few words about conflict may help most people trying to get their arms around this mediation process. My sense, having been involved in many of these sessions on both sides of the table, is that one of the main causes of conflict is people forming very different perceptions of the same facts, the same event, the same information, whatever it is. At this point in the case, there aren't many secrets you have. Everyone knows just about everything, about all the facts and the situation you're in. The dispute you are having is really driven by different perceptions of the same thing. So one of the things I think we can help you with is to support your good decision-making by helping everyone here look at all the facts and information from someone's perspective other than your own. That's quite easy to say, but really hard to do. Look through someone else's lenses in a new way. There are two ways we can go about mediation. Many times people want to start in joint session like this to explain their positions, how they're feeling about the situation, and really anything they may want to talk about. And that's great if that's what you like to do. Our other option is to go straight to private meetings separately because many people find it easier to talk candidly about all that needs to be talked about, and that's fine too. The important thing to remember about these private meetings is that they are just that, private. If we hear something in a private meeting that seems like it might be a good idea to share with someone else in the mediation, we will ask you specifically about that and won't mention anything to anyone unless we talk to you about it first and you're okay with having the information communicated to someone else. In simple terms, we will seek your direct permission before communicating anything during the process. The reason behind that is fairly obvious. We all need to feel safe and confident that we can talk about anything you want to candidly without fear that it will get out. So enough from me. Do you have any questions about anything? And would you like to both begin a joint session or would you prefer to meet privately?
I'm okay to begin in joint session.
Great. Russ, how about
This
you?
is Russ, and I'm okay to begin in joint session as well. I have no further questions.
Great. Okay, then let's begin by having the complainant, that's Jesse, share what you believe are the issues that brought us here today, and then we'll have the respondent, Russ, will have the opportunity to ask questions, and then I'll ask the respondent the same question. What are the reasons you believe brought us here today? Then Jesse will have the opportunity to ask questions if so desired. Once we've heard from both sides, we will separate you into two rooms, and Anita and I will go back and forth between the rooms to meet with you privately. Before we start, though, I want to ask you to please respect the other side by not interrupting their presentation. Both of you will have every opportunity to make your case, and we will have a much better chance of success today if we can respect the other side's position, even if you don't agree with it. Can we all commit to doing that?
Yes, I can.
This is Russ. Yes, I can.
Great. The other thing I don't want you to read in it, the other thing is I don't want you to read anything into who we start with first or how long we are with each side. Usually that just means Anita and I need more clarification and understanding for ourselves. We both have read all the material you've provided, so there's no need to restate the briefs and responses you've already submitted. But as you know, that's just part of the story. To help you best, we need to fully understand each side. So again, don't read into anything how long we spend with either side or who we start with first. Fair enough?
Yep.
Mhm.
Great. Anything else, Anita?
Good to go.
Okay, Jesse, let's start with you then. Tell us why you think we're here and why you believe that Russ owes you some money.
So basically, I purchased Russ's home for a little over $2 million. And while I did understand that it was an as-is purchase, there were a few things presented to me throughout the purchase and prior to writing the offer that I felt should have been upheld. For example, the landscaping of the property was a major selling point to me, and it was very much prevalent in the advertisement of the property about the lush landscaping. He had these massive pots with mature palm trees and throughout the yard that just really led to the overall landscaping and beauty of the property that were a major selling feature to me. There were also some window coverings throughout the property that I was explained to by my agent that would convey as part of the contract that were removed from the property when I took possession. There was also, although again, I knew I was purchasing the property as is, when I went to do my final walkthrough, I thought the property was going to be broom cleaned, but there were just so many things left in the property, personal belongings, and then there was damage discovered that wasn't previously disclosed to me. That made me really question how much of the accuracy of the disclosures occurred. I just felt like these things should have been told to me throughout the transaction as opposed to me finding out at the end. I also was not, I thought that I understood that the property was supposed to be in the same condition as when when I wrote the offer, but the landscaping had been let go. There was some sprinklers that had been broken. And like I said, the disclosures didn't convey some of the damage that I saw after their belongings had been removed from the property. And it just wasn't the same as what had been presented to me. And it really caused some issues and monetary damages for me as the buyer that I had to deal with right at the beginning of moving in that I did not anticipate based on how the transaction was described to me to proceed.
Thank you. Russ, do you have any questions for Jesse?
Yes, I do. Thank you for that. When you talk about the broom clean level, when exactly did you inspect the property?
So we did our final walkthrough 5 days prior to closing, and there were still a lot of belongings throughout, stuff in the drawers, and scratches that, some of the rooms had been emptied, but some hadn't. So that's when we discovered a lot of those items.
Is that the same condition you received then when you got keys 5 days later?
So no, there was some changes that had occurred from that time when I got the keys.
So it
But
was,
there were still some items I had to deal with, like the scratches on the floor. I wasn't anticipating that. The sprinklers weren't working. There was a fire door, the fire door in the to the garage. The hardware was missing from that. None of those things I felt had been resolved.
but you mentioned personal items were still in the property, and you mentioned whether it was clean. Were those two items addressed?
The clean, yes.
Okay.
And the personal belongings, yes, were gone.
Okay. And then, um, did your agent and my agent talk about the planters and the drapes? Are you aware of any
That
conversations?
I can't speak to. That wasn't conveyed to me.
Okay, as I have some evidence to that, but I'll bring that up when I talk. As it, but as that, so you were not aware of any communication about the planters or the drapes between the agents themselves?
No.
Okay. As I have no further questions.
Anita, do you have any questions? I have one, Jesse. I know that you submitted a request for $40,000. Is there a breakdown? Do you have any specific details on that as to how you came up with that number?
So the landscaping was in all of the media photos, as I'm sure you saw from the listing. The replacement of those mature trees is significant. If I were to, they obviously had been there for a while, and it was a major selling point of the property. Also, the large pots that line the driveway, those are almost $600 to $800 a piece, and there were several of those that were removed to the property that should have stayed. The drapes, it was part of the contract that the drapes were to stay there, and when I went, there was no window covering, so that was quite shocking.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Russ, do you have any comment you want to make before we break off into separate rooms?
Yeah, is that I would like to state that as I've given evidence of, as there were text messages between the agent or me and the agents, specifically about the planters and the drapes, and we did spend significant amount of time cleaning that place to get it to a point where it was broom ready, I guess is the best way to put it, before we gave it to the buyer. They're not really being honest about that at this particular moment in time. So we spent several days. Now, as to the damage and stuff like that, that's why we did list it as is, because we knew that it had been lived in. As to the planters, they were very, I mean, specifically the planters, those were family heirlooms that had been in my family for years, my kids grew up with them and everything like that. So it became part of the family that we brought with us, even with the full mature trees. And I mean, we we're we were willing to replace the planters because, I mean, we couldn't give them those particular planters, but we're willing to replace them with something similar. As to the drapes, as my wife made those specifically things. They made them by hand, each and every one of those window coverings specifically for each of those windows, because they're weird sizes and stuff like that. So, and they're of a specific material that my wife just told me about, and I kind of didn't pay attention to much. Forgive me. But then we're willing to give them back. I mean, they're willing to. We can give the drapes back. It's not as if they really want them. They're specifically for that house. So the material, I think, when my wife wanted to make something else with them. So at this point, we're willing to give back the drapes. We're willing to replace the planters. But $40,000 is a little bit excessive. And as to the contract, I I I didn't see anything about the drapes in the contract. I didn't see anything at all. There was so much paperwork to deal with, 40, 50, 60, 100 pages of stuff. I just couldn't read every little detail. So that's what I've got. And thank you very much.
Okay, Jesse, any questions for Russ again before we break off into separate rooms?
I don't know that I have any questions. I just, again, want to reiterate that, I thought we wrote a fair contract and I just didn't feel the contract was honored.
Understand. Thank you.
I disagree.
Okay. So we're going to have, again, Anita and I are going to talk about who we're going to start with first. It's really irrelevant how much time we spent. Don't read anything into that. We'll go back and forth between you guys. So you'll get put off into a separate room. Anthony or Jennifer will take you off, and then we'll come back and we'll join you soon.
So I think if you agree, Chris, probably the first step is to talk with the buyer, because I'd like to get a real gut feeling, realistic about her 40,000 ask. I'd like to have good clarification and understanding, and kind of maybe push her back on her heels a little bit for that ask to be ready for us going back and forth. What do you think?
Absolutely. Yeah, we have to clarify that number so we know we can have something to work from.
Yeah. And then do you want to start with her? Do you want me to start?
Go ahead. You start with her.
Okay. All right. Hey, welcome back. Jesse and Nancy, thanks for joining us and working with Chris and I to get some clarity on the situation so we can really do a great job of helping you guys resolve this issue today. Does that sound good, Jesse?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so let's see what we can do. I think the first question we have really is Chris and I would really appreciate some clarity on a breakdown of that 40,000. I mean, it does sound like this is between us in this room. We're not, anything you say in here, we're not sharing with the other side without your permission. So to be perfectly clear, so Chris and I may be a little more blunt or straightforward in asking you questions for clarity. The 40,000 really would help us a lot on a breakdown of that, so that we've got a little more leverage in talking to the seller. So Jesse, how'd you come to the 40K?
So, let's start with the drapes. Those were really large windows that they had completely removed all the window coverings. It's not just a standard drape. Like he said, they were custom made drapes. Even if I were to put I couldn't even just go to Home Depot or Lowe's and buy window coverings for those because they're custom size windows. So there's multiple, and some of the windows are in fact almost like 2-story windows. So it's a large expense to go through now and do window coverings for them, unless he gives them back. So that's part of it. The other was the custom pots that he mentioned that he took from the driveway. Those not only were extremely large pots, I mean, I would say, I think Nancy, there was like 5 or 6 of them around the driveway. But they were, 2 to 3 foot tall, and they had trees growing out of them, not
Huge
just,
trees.
flower pots. Yeah. They're substantial pots. And then to replace the landscaping that they removed that were not only in the pots, but in the yard. And then, like I said, the sprinklers were let go. So a lot of the landscaping around the property, died, like the grass was almost dead. I feel like he just kind of let that go. So, to replace about, 10 to 12 mature palm trees, plus the small landscaping, plus those pots and all the drapes, that's how I arrived at
And
the.
don't forget the labor. I mean, just
Yeah.
installation of the drapes, et cetera. I mean, we really, those numbers just,
Yeah.
the minute you have to hire somebody, it gets crazy.
So,
Yeah.
Jesse, can I ask? And sorry, but I want to make sure we get some questions covered so we can get down to the level of detail that really helps us. What proposal did you get for window coverings? What was your ticket on that?
So on that one, I had 15,000 estimated for the window treatments to do I mean, it's not, I can never do like for like because like he said, they were custom made, but as close as possible to drapery that would, suffice in the same window arrangements, plus, the installation. I mean, it's not certainly not like I can just go and install those.
So what was your total number for the window coverings?
It
Is
was
that the 15K complete, or was
Yes.
that 15K plus labor?
It
What
was
do you-
15K with labor. And then for the landscaping, I'm looking at another, I think it was like 30,000 for landscaping and, just to get it back to where it was. I mean, Nancy had explained to me when I wrote the contract, they're supposed to maintain it, but he did not, and he didn't ask me to remove any of those items.
So then with and it sounds to me like you're including in that 30K, the landscaping that was damaged, the sprinklers being off. I think we could see from the photos that a lot of the grass looked dried out. We didn't see it in person, but of course that's what it looked like. So if you could give me a breakdown then between what you valued for replacement of the potted plants and the mature plants, I know that can be a chunk of money, and then compared to repairing the landscaping, how did you break that down to come to your 40?
So, a gardener told me to fix the sprinklers and everything. That would be about 2,000. And then, he gave me an estimate for 35 to replace all the trees, the pots, and bring it back to the way it was. So, I mean, really 40 is like a deal between that and the drapes.
Okay, so in that 35 from the landscaper, he's really talking about doing the work of finding the pots, replacing, purchasing, finding appropriate plants, etc. I do know that could be
Yeah.
a big expense.
And
Okay.
I'm not getting, what was there. I'm getting something close. I mean, I had envisioned moving in, having all these things there, but, so now I have to change it a little bit. It's
I
not.
mean, that size trees could be hundreds of thousands if you really were going to get
Exactly.
huge trees. So she would end up with smaller trees and smaller plants.
Mhm.
Right. Okay. Thanks. That's for me at the moment. Chris?
I think that's the main thing, is trying to come up with that number because, when someone sees that, it's shocking, especially when the sellers had them made themselves. It sounds like a lot of money. Now they did a couple things that I wanted to ask you about. The pictures that you submitted in your claim were taken before the house was actually turned over to you. It was during the walkthrough, and they
Mhm.
hadn't gotten everything out yet. And I just want to make sure that we're on the same page here, that when the house was left, when you actually took possession, everything was cleaned out. I mean, I'm not sure where you get the broom clean. That's sort of not in the contract anywhere. Um, that was your expectation, but the house, from what we could see, looked like it was turned over like most houses would be, where everything was removed and it was fairly clean. Are you in
Yeah,
agreement with that?
yes, I would agree with that.
Okay. And I know that there was a couple items left in the bathroom drawer here and there that they wanted to come back in and get. But so really, to narrow it down, the condition of the property, we're kind of saying at least the interior of the home was acceptable. It's the exterior and trees and curtains, potted plants
Correct.
and curtains. Okay.
Okay. So at the moment, I don't think I have any other questions other than I think as we're going through this process, I think it's a really good idea, Jesse, if you think through, we want to find a resolution. And Chris and I aren't here to tell you that that amount is right or not. We're not bidding on the job or searching for potted plants, but we also know that there's some negotiating that's going to go back and forth to come to a resolution and have an agreement done today. So maybe in your mind, rethinking what your ask is. I'm not asking you for anything else right now. Appreciate the clarification that the property was, your personal items and debris were primarily removed. So that's no longer on the table. But the other items that are significant, obviously, are the drapes, the landscaping, the potted plants. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And Jesse, Russ did offer in writing and in his earlier statement that he's willing to have those drapes returned, right? If that's what you want, he will have those returned and he will also replace those pots with similar pots. I mean, apparently there's sentimental value. Hard for me to get sentimental to a pot, but that's neither here nor there, right? So
Right.
if he were to bring back the curtains, have them installed, and bring back the pots, are you okay with that? Because that certainly changes the dynamic here.
I would say, yeah, but there needs to be some thought to, I'm gonna have to hire somebody to install these. I can't just, put the window coverings up on my own. I'm gonna have to have somebody to install that. I'm also gonna have to have a landscaper come out and, put all the landscaping back together. I mean, it's one thing to pay for the pots, but I'm gonna have some additional costs involved in getting the landscaping back to what really should have been, left for me as part of the purchase contract.
And understandable. The curtains, the sellers were the ones who hung them initially. Would you be comfortable with them coming back and rehanging them just as they were when you saw the property?
To be honest, I would just prefer to not have them come back. I just, yeah, I want to handle things on my own. I don't want them coming back to the property.
Got it. Okay.
Understandable.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. I think we've asked a bunch of questions here. We're going to go put you guys back in the waiting room, and then we're going to go talk to Russ for a minute.
Okay.
Okay, Jesse, you and I can talk about how we're going to proceed while we're on break.
Okay.
Okay. We had a chance to talk to the claimant, to Jesse, and got a sense of where they are. We understand your willingness and appreciate your willingness to put the curtains back and to replace the pots. And while that's a good start, that doesn't really get us everywhere we need to go. The buyers are feeling some hesitancy about having you and your wife back in the property, frankly. They feel that maybe there was some mistrust because of what they expected and didn't get. So while they would like to have the curtains back, they want to have them professionally hung themselves. The pots, they're okay with having similar pots replaced, but that doesn't replace the mature trees and things that were in them. So we've got some more to go there as well. We did get them to accept the fact that the property was left, interior at least, in reasonable condition. They kind of backed off the fact that there was some undisclosed things because when they took the pictures and submitted those, that was prior to you having the house cleaned out.
Yeah.
But we
that
still
makes
do
sense.
have the issue of the exterior. They're saying sprinklers are off, grass is dying. It wasn't in the same condition as when they saw it. So we've made a little bit of progress, but we're not all the way there.
Okay. Well, I mean, they want the curtains rehung but I mean, we specifically asked my agent. I know my agent talked to them, or at least I think he did, as that he was supposed to have communicated with them that this was going on, communicated between him and the seller's agent.
Well, ultimately, I don't think that's what happened. I don't think that the buyer or the buyer's agent were involved in those. I think that was just your agent. The text messages that we saw indicate that he said that he didn't think it would be a problem, but we don't know that it went any further than that.
And ultimately what happens with this dispute, this really ends up being the dispute between you as the seller and Jesse as the buyer. And unfortunately, sometimes conversations that take place verbally can be different than what's been agreed to in the contract. And we saw the specific contract in the materials that were submitted, and in the purchase contract, whether you're not aware of it or not, you might be now, Russ, but
I am
clear.
now, but I mean, just when you're dealing with the hundreds of pages that you're just supposed to click through.
I'm agreeing with you, but the reality is when we're trying to resolve a problem, we go back to what was agreed to. So as you now know, though, all the window coverings, unless they were excluded, which they weren't, they're automatically included in the purchase price. And then normally the potted plants, since they're not buried in the ground, they would not be included, but the buyer very intentionally had written in all the pots to be included. So you may not have seen that, and I'm sorry for that. But right now, in resolving this between the buyer and the seller, those are specifically contractual agreements.
The pots are.
And the drapes.
And the drapes, but not the palms, then, right?
The plants in the pots.
Potted plants.
Yeah.
It said potted plants? Okay.
Yes, they included those. That's what was written in the purchase agreement. So it sounds like you may have missed that or been told otherwise, but that verbally doesn't undo the agreement between you and the buyer. So what's your proposed solution? As you know, asking for $40K,
It's ridiculous.
the guesstimate. We were asking Jesse the guesstimate. The breakdown of that was maybe about 15,000 to replace the drapes. Quite frankly, I think 15,000 for the new custom drapes and hanging may actually be a little bit low. But the remainder of that money really was to go towards what can be extremely expensive for the potted plants, mature trees, and even the photos we saw. It's hard to tell from reality, but it looked like significant damage to the landscaping, et cetera. So many areas that appeared to be browned out compared to at the time when it was first listed and the offer submitted. So what are some of your solutions to this?
I'm willing to give the drapes back. The drapes were custom for the house, so we don't really need that much fabric. I mean, and if they need to be professionally hung, I kind of get. The water is my agent didn't say to keep the lawn on, and it was costing me a couple $1,000. A couple $100 a month on in water bill. I was trying to reduce and obviously save some costs. On the trees, I'm not giving back the pots. I'm not giving with the trees in them. They're just too tied to the family, and they're already moved. I I don't know that I see what they're saying. I understand what they're saying, and I don't agree with everything because they're being a little bit overly overbearing, as because we could probably get the drapes up in a couple of days. As if they don't want to let us back in, that does kind of hamper us. Uh, would they accept $10,000?
Is that a proposal? Is that something that we can take back to them? Is that an offer?
Yeah, I mean, I just want this to go away. $10,000 would be, as I concede that there were things that were in the contract that we took out that I thought were okay because of my agent. I'll deal with him. But I mean, if they're willing to, I'll make this go. If they're willing to make this go away, I'll bring back the drapes. As I think I said my wife was looking through the boxes and found some of the hardware for the doors and stuff like that she was talking about. So we would be more willing to drop that off as well and then a check for $10,000.
So to be clear, Russ, your proposal is, are the drapes put away and stored and
Yeah,
in good
they're in good
condition so
condition.
that we're
Yes.
not going to solve a problem to have another problem?
Yeah,
They're
no, they're
all
not. We boxed them and took, my wife was very particular about it because she really wanted that fabric back because it was, as a designer, something I'm not
okay.
familiar with, forgive me.
And then you've got all the hardware for all
For
those drapes
fire,
and window
yes,
covering,
yes, I have all the
all
hardware
that.
as well. Yes,
Okay, for all of that. So you're willing to deliver that back to the
and I also have the
buyer.
hardware for the door, the fire door that she mentioned. We have that as well, and we're willing to return that as well.
Okay, so for you, your proposal is the $10,000 kind of covering for installing the window coverings, replacing
Pots and
pots
pan.
and potted plants, and for them to do what needs to be done to the damaged landscaping
Yes.
and the grass that's dried out, etc.
Yeah, that's what I would propose. $10,000, the drapes and all its returned, all its, the drapes are returned with all their hardware, the door handle is returned and then $10,000.
Okay. So, Chris, what do you, obviously, we're going to need permission from you, Russ, to go and present that over to the other side. Chris, do you have any other suggestions for us on how we craft a response from Russ on this? We're going back and forth.
No, but let's just go back and see. We haven't really come to a number. You know, they threw out their number originally on the other side, and we don't know where that is in reality. So let's just go back and give it a try. That's all we can do.
So
That's all
go
we can
back
do.
with the 10
Yeah.
and the return of the item. So you're good with that, Russ?
Yeah, I'm very good with that, please.
Okay. So
So
Chris,
it's interesting.
yeah.
Go ahead.
I was, I thought out of the gate, him coming up with 10, although I absolutely appreciate his willingness and aware of the seriousness of it. I'm thrilled that he came up with 10. I was kind of hoping it might be a little bit less because I think that the other side is then likely to think that he'll go up from there. And I'm not sure we could get an agreement on. What's your thought on it or strategy on presenting to the buyer?
Excuse me, Nancy. Oh, no, sorry, not Nancy. But Anita and Chris,
Yeah.
we have a notice from Russ calling you guys back. I believe he wants to talk to you guys more about his decision.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Before we go back in there, let me just finish this if we can, Anthony.
Yeah, sure thing. Just let me know.
So the problem I'm having with the buyer's claim right now is they want the curtains back, but they don't want the seller to hang them. Right? It's their choice to have them hung by somebody else. And that shouldn't be put on the buyer, on the seller, because if the seller wants to do it, they've already done it once. Right? Why should the buyer have the ability to say, I want the curtains back, but I want to pay to have them installed myself? Right? I mean, I think the seller's being genuine and offering to do that. So, yeah, I agree with you. I think that's probably a little bit much at this point.
Yeah, yeah. So UK, let's go see what the seller has to say, Russ has to say, to chit chat with us before we go back in with the buyer.
Yeah.
Hey, Russ, thanks for calling us back in. What
Thanks.
other
What's up?
thought? We have not gone and talked to the other side yet. So what
Okay,
other thoughts
perfect.
did you have?
As I've been thinking about this, is that they're not going to let me back in to install everything. As I'm willing to give back the curtains, I'm even willing to go in and install them myself. As it's a little extra time, but I'm willing to do it. If they're not willing to meet me halfway and let me into the property and do that, I don't want to pay for professional installation. So this idea of 10,000, I think I want to reduce that down to 7,500. They just need to be a little bit more accommodating on this whole thing. It's ridiculous.
Understand. So that's the
Sounds
number we're going to
reasonable.
authorize to go back at is 7,500.
Yes, I'll give them back if they won't let me back in to install, it's 7,500. As I'll give back the curtains and all the material or the hanging appliances, whatever.
Hardware
thank
and
you.
replacing the pots.
And replace. Yes, and replacing the pots but no trees inside the pots,
Right.
and then the hardware for the doors.
Okay.
Wait, I need clarification on what we're saying. So your offer to them is $7,500. You'll return all the curtains, which have been carefully stored,
Maintained,
wrapped up
yep.
and stored. You'll return the curtains and the hardware, and for 7,500, you will install. You'll give them
7,500, and I will do the installation if they
You
want.
will, because that certainly was your wife's business.
But if they don't want to let me in, then I'm not going to pay for professional installation.
Okay, but your proposal is 7,500, returning the curtains and the hardware, and you or your wife's team in reinstalling.
Sure. Yes.
And then the 7,500 then is to really cover the cost of for the buyer to replace the pots, the mature
Yes.
plants in the pots, and to repair the landscaping.
My
Is that
apologies.
accurate?
I got caught up. I got mixed up. I apologize. Yes, for the potted plants, I was willing to offer them, but they don't really seem to want the pots without the plants. So they can just replace whatever they want with pots, and they can do that with the $7,500 and fix the landscaping, because all it needs really is a little bit of water for the landscaping.
Okay.
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 Sorry about the confusion. I got mixed up. Forgive me. It's been a long day.
Yeah. No problem. The clarity is just important to us. Thanks.
Of course it
Russ.
is. I appreciate you.
Yeah. So if we're good, Chris and I'll pop into a room to chit chat briefly before we go and talk to the buyer's side.
Thank you.
So I certainly think that that's, based on the circumstances, a reasonable proposal to take back to the other side. Do you want to start up with them, or any other thoughts or strategy
No,
we might have in
you and I
talking
were
with?
kind of thinking along the same lines that, you know what, if you're not willing to allow them to come back, that's where their business. They hung them initially. If they're not
Yeah.
allowing them to redo that, then that cost should be borne by the buyer. They're getting the curtains back. So I think that's a reasonable proposal.
I do too. I do too. So when we pop, they may think that the amount of money to replace all that other stuff is too nominal, but the beauty of it is the buyer is going to be able to pick what they want.
Right.
I mean, they couldn't have been in love with everything. Nobody ever is. So as far as then the pots or the potted plants, they can do their due diligence and really get what they want, however they spend that money or don't spend it. So I think that's a real plus in their on their side to be able to do that. So we pop in. Do you want to take the lead when we pop
Sure.
in with them?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, Jesse, Nancy, we're back. Before we discuss what we talked about with Russ, you guys have any thoughts while you're away? Any additional thoughts?
So, I mean, I've been thinking about, what you said, and yes, they did correct some of the issues. So, I'd be willing to negotiate a little on price. But I still feel like I'm really entitled to, the majority of what I'm asking for since it was in the contract.
So I understand that, but let me try and make sure that we're clear on this, is that you want them to return the curtains, but you're not willing to allow them to rehang them, even though that was their business and they did that initially. And obviously, when you saw the house, you were pleased by it and you like the look of it because you want that back. So you don't want them to be able to install them. You want to have that done yourself, but that's something that they should bear the cost of then. That's what you're asking, essentially.
I think they should bear a portion of the cost of that. The main expense is the landscaping. And I'm not going to be able to get like for like Nancy mentioned, I'm going to have to deal with, some of these trees were there for years and years and years and years. I mean, they lived there a really long time. I'm not going to be able to get the same size tree, even for trees, for even what I'm going to be spending. The pots, I'm not going to be able to get the same size pots. I mean, truly, the majority of the expense is from the landscaping. So I'm willing to negotiate some, but I mean, the landscaping is a huge expense and yeah, I'm not comfortable with them coming back into my home after all that's occurred.
There's really a sour taste from this whole transaction, I think. And it really is not something that Jesse wants to have, to revisit. And I don't blame her, really. There was some bad feelings there, so she doesn't want him back on the property.
Understand that, but the contract said that the house was to be purchased with the drapes, right? They're offering to put the drapes back in. So it's essentially it's your choice not to allow them to do that because they're bringing back the drapes and are willing to have them installed at their cost. So I understand your uneasiness and you don't want them back in the house. However, that's a choice you're making that they shouldn't have to bear the cost of. Does that make sense?
Yes, I understand that. And that's why I feel like I'm willing to negotiate down on the settlement.
Fair enough. Initially, you said that $15,000 was for the drapes and the hanging, right? So if they were to bring the drapes back, and if you were to allow them to rehang them, that really solves that $15,000 problem. So if there's anything, if part of your willing to negotiate is still the fact that you have to pay to have someone hang them, that's really a choice you're making, not the contractual agreement. Does that make sense?
Correct. Yes, it does.
So if we take the 40,000 you started with and we knock off the 15, we're down to $25,000.
Correct.
Okay.
Are they going to return the drapes and all of the materials to hang them and everything else that came with them?
They
All of
save
the
them, they
hardware.
package them up and save them, and they're in great condition, all the hardware, everything. They will have them reinstalled. If you allow them, they would put them back up so they look just like they did when you saw the house. That's what their preference is.
Yeah. Well, they did come up with a proposal, and as we go back and forth, I'm not going to pretend this is what you want to hear, but this is part of the process going back and forth. And we did clarify that quite a bit with Russ about their ability, their business of doing drapes, installing drapes and decor. And then in addition, their counter proposal is returning the drapes, which have been well cared for and stored away. They've got all the hardware stacked away, and they have the ability or the team to reinstall it. So their proposal is to return all the hardware, reinstall, and then in addition, a $7,500 so that you've got the option and the choice to spend that money on your preferences for pots, potted plants, more or less, bigger or smaller, as well as what might need to be done to the lawn. Certainly, the seller is saying that from his experience living in that home, this isn't the first time the lawn is dried out. His experience has been that a little bit of time and water resolves the problem. So he really believes from his ownership that there's not going to be a big expense for that grass that I agree in the photos look pretty dried out. So his proposal back is that 7,500. They return the drapes well maintained, reinstalling them with the hardware.
So did he make any recommendation as to the cost to replacement of the pots and the trees? I mean, I feel like, he's only wants to address the grass, but there's, all this landscaping that was mature, had been there for a long time. The pots are, as you can see in the photos, they're very substantial. They're not just your average pots. I mean, they're heavy. I'm guessing, I don't know, Nancy, do you remember if they were made of cement? I mean, I feel like
I think they were cement. They're very heavy, and I don't think that's something you can just go out and buy at Home Depot.
exactly. I mean, I'm gonna have to, find something similar, because I really enjoyed that look of the property. Is one of the things that drew me to it, and so I feel like 7,500 just isn't even going to scratch the surface of the landscaping, never mind the grass. I mean, those trees were mature and had been there for years. So yeah, I just feel like that's just barely scratching the surface of the landscaping costs that I'm going to incur to bring this property back to the way it was marketed. And they did do a heavy push in the marketing. It was in all of their flyers. They had flyers sitting on the counter, referencing their lush landscaping, and they just took it all. It's not the same.
Well, I
Yeah.
do want to say, I think when we're looking at the photos, I think, of course, Chris and I've never been at the property, and I could see the importance of the ambiance with the potted plants. Now, by the way, we looked at the photos as well. We haven't been there firsthand, but there's still a ton of landscaping that was in ground, a lot of palms and other mature plants that weren't taken. So we aren't talking about all the landscaping. For the 7,500, that allows you to be able to spend that money on which type of pots you want and which type of plants. There's still a lot of mature plants on that property. So it's really talking about replacing the plants in the pots. Make sense?
It does, but I think if you add up, like, those pots are going to be at least $800 to $1,000. There's seven pots that were gone, so that's $7,000 in pottery right there. And then I haven't even begun to replace the trees that were in them. I mean, it's not like they just had, Home Depot, annuals potted in these plants. They had trees plus the plants in there. I mean, it's an expensive ordeal to replace that. And, like, I submitted my estimate, and, again, I'm going to have to accept smaller versions of what was there to even try and get close. And that was 35,000. I just feel like 7,500 is frankly a little insulting.
Well, what's most important may not be what you want, but what's important is the conversation. So appreciate the conversation so that we can continue the conversation.
And Jesse, I mean, we need to be talking reality here. Understanding that bid of $35,000 to the seller, that's just as outlandish as your estimate of the other, right? I mean, that's a lot of money for the landscaping from what we can see, right? As Anita said, most of the landscaping, the property is still there. We're talking about I thought it was 6 potted plants, 6 trees in potted plants, that frankly, there's no way it can cost $35,000. So, I mean, I understand your desire to pad that number and try and come up with a bigger settlement. But in reality, that isn't going to fly. It just isn't going to work. You have
Well,
to
our
know that.
original ask was 40, and if you take the 15 out for the curtains, and they return those curtains and the hardware, and you take off the 15, we're still at 25.
And they're offering 7,500,
Mhm.
right? So what we are is what is that? We're, do the math in my head. What are we up apart from your initial ask? And again, that was just an ask, right?
We're roughly $18,000
Right.
apart.
Yes.
So let me acknowledging, let's say we're talking about the 40, taking away the 15, which takes us to 25. And if we say as far as the grass goes, because we're going to have to, for discussion, we're going to have to make kind of some assumptions here that you don't actually need to do all new grass and sod. If that's true, that it really just takes a little time and water, then we're really saying that it's going to take $25,000 to purchase 6 or 8 pots with mature plants. And I'm not sure that that's going to sound like a reasonable ask to anybody. So I'd love to find out, based on their proposal, what's your counter proposal, so that
I
we've
think
got
that's
something to
reasonable.
talk about.
And before we do that, just let's make it clear that if this doesn't get settled today, right? This is a mediation where, as I mentioned earlier, you guys have the ability to be part of that process. If you take the claim and it doesn't settle today and you need to go to arbitration, right? Let's look at what that looks like, right? You're going to spend $25,000 or more in attorney's fees to litigate this thing for the next year of your life. And you're going to have to convince an arbitrator that a reasonable number for 6, 7 potted plants and some trees and turning the water back on is a reasonable number. And that's going to be a stretch. You just have to know that, right? And at that point, if you're not successful and you can't convince an arbitrator of that, you may not get anything because they may not split the baby. You may not get anything and you'll be out of attorney's fees. And by the way, if it goes to arbitration because you've been to mediation as well, the prevailing party may be entitled to attorney's fees. So it could be that you end up having to pay the other side's attorney's fees as well. So it could be a whole lot of money and time and lost productivity chasing something down for something that is not a guarantee, right? Anita and I have done these enough times to know that no one's 100% right and no one's 100% wrong, right? So I know you came in at 40, but that was an arbitrary number. What they're offering is to make the house as whole as possible by returning curtains, having them rehung, giving you money for plants and pots, and offering $7,500. That's not a bad offer. And it ends today, right? The thing about mediation is a successful mediation is nobody walks away happy, right? Seller's not happy to write a check and have to do this for set, right? And you're not going to be happy with that settlement, but that's successful mediation.
You think, Nancy, you saw
Well,
when
I
we
think there's a
looked
lot of assumptions that the cost of the plants is going to be very low and the cost of the pots are going to be very low. And I think that that's really your call, Jesse, in terms of what you're willing to, to absorb to get back to what you consider to be the house you bought. I think it's somewhere in the middle. I think your initial offer wasn't crazy. You did have numbers to back it up, and you actually came in under what those numbers were. I think that was reasonable. So I think that, somewhere in the middle here is a reasonable number.
what if the seller give the drapes and all the hardware, and they give me 18,000 for the land?
So
the
does that mean that you're going to allow them to come back and they're going to come back and hang the drapes the way they were? Or
No, they don't need to hang them. I'll take care of that. I really don't want them on the property, but they give me the drapes, the hardware, 18,000 for the landscaping and the pots.
So for clarity, for us to pop back and talk to the seller about it, when you're in your mind, what's the distribution of the 18, or what needs to be done to the landscaping besides buying potted plants and appropriate plants that you want to put in those? And by the way, Jesse, you may find that if you had originally purchased the pots, you may not have purchased those 6 or 8 pots, those same pots or that same size. You may decide that the look and the for the property is 2 bigger potted plants at the front, and you're going to have the flexibility to do that with the money, not replace identical, or by the way, even replace it all. If we come to an agreement on the money, nobody's going to monitor what you spend the money on. So for the 18, what are you thinking the breakdown is on that 18? So we've got that bit of information to talk to Russ about.
So I would say it's at least 8,000 for the pots and another 10,000 for the mature trees that were in the pots.
But you mentioned not allowing the sellers to hang the drapes. So
yeah, they need to just give me the
She wasn't
hardware.
counting drapes on that.
Okay.
No, but you're using $8,000 for the pots and 10,000 for the trees. But you still have to have the curtains hung. So are you?
She was going to absorb that.
Yeah, I'm going to absorb that.
Okay, not having the sellers come in. So that's your breakdown of the 18 ask.
Correct.
Okay, and that's a number you want us to go back to the seller with?
Yeah, please.
Okay. All right.
Let's see what we can do. So they came back at 18. I have a tough time putting $10,000 in for trees and pots. I can't see that any way, shape, or form. And 8,000 pots. From me looking at the photos, I wouldn't put those back in. Like you said, I'd probably put 2 of them back in.
I know, that's kind of why I was trying to float that idea to the buyer. We already know the buyer is not going to, chances are slim to none, they're going to go back and spend that money on all that identical stuff. Chances are slim to none. And so it sounds like she's dialed it back from the curtains, okay, for the return of them, and not really looking for compensation for hanging, but doesn't matter what pot of money the money is put in for pots or plants. I think it's a big ask, but I guess the best we can do is just see what we can do based on that, of getting Russ, the seller, to come up on what he's willing to do. It takes it off the table for him not having to arrange with his wife or team to reinstall and take that stress off their plate.
Because imagine the liability if something happens while they're installing them. They don't want any part of that. So I know that emotionally hurts them, that they're not going to be allowed back in the house.
Yeah.
This is better for them in the long run because they won't have to do that. Yeah.
Agreed. So just reducing it to a check, writing a check.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So do you want to start out with Russ? You want me to? What do you think?
Why don't you take him this time?
Okay.
Hi, what did they say?
Hey, so welcome back. There's always good news and bad news. And what's most important is making a lot of progress as we go back and forth and understand the mindset of the other side as we go back and forth, what's really important to them. So I think after this back and forth, I think that Chris and I can more quickly cut to the chase with you on talking about the buyer's expectation and then what we can get from you to help meet them or give a counter proposal. They absolutely do want the drapes and the hardware returned, but she does not. I understand it. She really doesn't want you, your wife, your team to come back into the house. They're kind of trying to put this behind them, which is, by the way, the value for everybody to get it resolved today, to have a done deal, whether it's how you hoped it would turn out. Most important is to have a done deal. So the proposal we've gotten back from them, she's still pretty emotionally tied to how vacant the property looks without the pots and the plants there. Although we did reinforce the fact that there's plenty of landscaping there still. A lot of the landscaping there that was mature was in the ground. It wasn't removed. So that she's certainly emphasizing those pots and plants. So her breakdown belief in her mind so far still is that it's going to cost her $8,000 for the pots and maybe $10,000 for the plants. So she's coming back okay with the return of the drapes and the hardware. You not installing it, she'll take responsibility for that,
Okay.
but still wants more compensation for what's going to add back the ambiance at the property, asking for 18,000 for her to be able to replace that to her satisfaction. There is a lot lacking there, and I'm really sorry you've been put in this position of maybe being not informed about the contract, but just still bound by the outcome. So I think,
Right. So
what
what's
are
her
you
final?
willing to do?
So they want me to give them. So let me understand this: is that they want me to give them back the drapes. They want and all the hardware. I said they don't want me to install it, so they're okay on that. But then they want $18,000 just for potted plants and palms.
That's
As
that's their ask.
I
In
That's their
general
ask.
landscape issues, yes.
general landscape issues. I
Yeah.
mm, I can't go. No, I no. There's just not that much there. 10,000. I mean $8,000 in just pots and stuff like that. I guess if she goes with the most expensive stuff, but the yard is still there. It just needs some little bit of water. It's not like we didn't kill anything. It is brown. I get it, but I mean we're in the middle of summer too. I mean let's be honest here.
Well, your proposal, what you gave us permission to go back to them was 7,500 with you and your wife or your wife's team reinstalling the drapes.
So
So
if we're
we're
past
taking that off
installation,
the plate. We're taking that off the plate. You don't have to schedule that and go through that drama and trauma of doing that. That's off the plate. So now we're at returning the drapes and writing a check. Their request is 18,000. Your
I don't
proposal
see
was 75.
I don't see them needing more than about $10,000 to be able to replace the palms and the things. And for a little bit, for a couple $100 worth of sprinkler stuff, eh, I'm gonna say 10. I'll say 10. I'll go up to 10. I said, but that's kind of like where I'm gonna cap out at. I mean, 10,000 is where I'm gonna be at.
Do you recall, it was hard for us to tell from the photos, and I'm sure the buyer knows exactly, but how many of those bigger pots were there? And I know there were several smaller ones. I don't think the smaller ones, to the buyer, they're significant. I don't think to overall ambiance. How much of those really big pots, how many were there? Were there like four of
I
the really big ones?
I, I believe that's correct. I believe that's correct. And I believe that you can get those for about $1,000 each. I believe you're correct, but that's the number I'm pulling off. I don't know. The ones I was going to replace
Yeah,
were going to be between $8 to $1,000 to replace them back. And I believe there was four, if I remember correctly.
for the big
As
ones. There were
for the big
more
ones,
other
for the
ones,
smaller
but
ones, I mean, they were not as significant a cost as that. I I the way I'm breaking it down is that for the pots, just for the pots, I don't think it's more than about $5,000. And then for the palms and stuff like that, you're not going to get mature but you can get some really decent ones out there for about $500 to $700 a piece right now. So my
mhm.
thought process would be another $5,000 in palms as that would get you everything we're looking for, the big and the small, as covering everything that they wanted to cover. And just to, I mean, 18 is too much, but I just want this kind of to go away at this point.
All right. I don't think
All
I
right.
need any more clarity at the moment.
So a couple things I want to make sure that we're clear of, though, is that when we come to a settlement, I'm confident we'll be able to do that today.
Hmm.
That settlement will include a hold harmless going forward. It's a blanket coverage, right? Part of that is what we call Section 1542, which says the Civil Code says that someone can't waive their rights to claims they aren't even aware of at this point. So a full settlement today, if they agree to that 10,000, would be a settlement of all issues known now or in the future. So there's some value to that, right? Is that done? It's over with. That's the beauty of getting it solved today. The other part of that, I know that you've had some harsh feelings for the other agent, right, in the past. It also includes an anti-disparagement, which means that social media, public statements, anything, you can't talk about this. The settlement's confidential. It's got to end, right? No bad comments, no words, no slander, nothing like that.
We've been holding off on that, so we haven't done anything about that at all yet.
Okay.
But we won't. Now that if this comes to fruition, we will not.
Okay. Great.
We kind of just want to move on and get on to with our lives into this point. And we would really like them to be happy with their new home. I mean, that's just ultimately what we want.
So I think we've got a little bit of work to do on the buyer here. I mean, I guess I really think the seller's proposal is reasonable, really reasonable.
Well, and here's how I'd like to go at it with them is if it doesn't get settled, if the buyer doesn't agree to this $10,000 right now and it ends up having to go further, the cost is just beginning, right? We both know that the cost for attorneys, the time involved for the next year of your life dealing with this, even if they were to prevail, they may not get attorney's fees. It's not guaranteed. They could end up winning but losing, right?
Yeah.
So the maximum at small claims court is 12.5. So the only other option is rather than go to arbitration is to go to small claims court, see if you can prevail. And the maximum you're going to get is 12.5, but then there's no mutual release either, right? That's just an award. So I'd like to maybe I'd like to work on them to understand that there's a value of maybe that $2,500 to be done today rather than to keep dragging this thing on down the road. See if we can get it back down to the 10.
Yeah, in that range. And I think even kind of where you were going that with thinking about in small claims court, arbitration or small claims court, I think it's hard for people to wrap their mind around. Once again, I want to clarify, we're really kind of both sides. We've kind of focused down on it's really the potted plants.
Right.
I think the other issues at this point have been resolved. So we're really talking about the potted plants. In his proposal, I think the way he broke that down to say, $5,000 to replace with nice pots and probably less money than that. And then the same thing with that $5,000 for mature plants.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's reasonable.
Yeah. So you want to start with them when we go back?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, we're back, as you can see. Jesse, sometimes as deep as we get into this, you kind of get into the weeds a little bit. It's hard you start looking at the forest or the trees instead of the forest, right? And so I think it might be helpful for us to take a step back and look at the big picture right now before we go further. And just talk about the process. The process of this mediation is, again, as we said, trying to get both parties to be involved in the decision to try and settle this today. There's a value to settling today, moving on with your life, not having to deal with this going forward. Because if it doesn't settle today, your options are really one of two things. Because you guys agreed to arbitration in the purchase contract, you can go that route. And as Nancy will tell you, that can be very expensive and very time consuming and no guarantee of winning. And the reality of that is, even if you were to be successful in winning the case, you may not be able to get your attorney's fees paid for. So you could win the battle, but lose the war, right? You could end up spending $25,000 to get your $18,000. So it's not a good solution. The other option is that you could go to small claims court. Small claims court, while the maximum is 12.5, is a much quicker, much more affordable resolution. But there's still a risk there. You're turning the decision making over to a judge to decide that case. And that, if you were to reduce your claim to 12.5, you could go to small claims court. But again, there's no guarantee of prevailing there. So I want you to think about that when we talk about what the seller's offer is, because what we're really down to is the seller's willing to come back and give the drapes back, all the hardware back, let you install them. And rather than $7,500, they come up to $10,000. And they think that $5,000 for the pots and $5,000 for landscaping is a reasonable number. And honestly, Anita and I can't really disagree with that. We could sit here and go back and forth for the next several hours about the value of the pots and the trees, or you could step back to the big picture and say, look, if I will accept $10,000 today, I'm done. It's a full release. I get a check in a week and I move on with my life. And I use that money to do the landscaping that I want to do. I get my curtains back and I get those hung, right? There is a value to your time. There's a value to your peace of mind that only you can determine what that is. And really what we're talking about is $8,000 for that. And I'm not even going to talk about eight because I don't think that's realistic. I think that if I was you and I didn't settle today, I would drop my claim to 12.5 and go to small claims court and take my chances there. So now what we're really talking about is a $2,500 difference. Does that make sense? From small claims to what they're offering. Is it worth you having to take more time off because you're not going with an attorney to file that case, go down, take a full day, and take your chances with a small claims judge for $2,500? Is that a reasonable use of your time and money? To me, that's where you stand right now, rather than talking about how much the trees and the pots and stuff are, because that's really not productive at this point.
I mean, I'm not happy to hear you, and I'm just to be done. I'm going to agree at this point, but I'm not. We had a contract at a certain amount, and that was for what was portrayed to me. The landscaping and all that. Yeah, just to be done with this, that's fine. I'll accept that.
So as I mentioned to Rustin, I mean, I think it's a wise decision. I mean, as I said before, nobody walks away from a successful mediation happy, right? Everyone's having to give, and that's the nature of it.
I think she would agree with me on this one that I don't think either party wants to have anything to do with the other at this point. In fact, we had discussed this briefly. I'm happy to play middleman here and have this the cashiers or have the check given to me and the curtains given to me so that she just does not have to deal with them any further beyond this point. This is a wiping of the hands completely. Let's just have this be done. I will take care of delivering that to her. And then we can all move forward.
Yes,
I
would
think-
like that.
Okay, and I think the other thing for us to nail down, Jesse and Nancy, I think I agree with Chris. I think it's really, really smart based on these circumstances. Really, really smart. Regarding the timing, I think for where we are on the timing, I think that less than a 2-week period of time, we can designate a certain date of get this all wrapped up, the value of coming to an agreement today, doing all the paperwork today, but then have a deadline, a very quick deadline for the transition of the drapes, the hardware, and the check is usually in everybody's best interest. And then sooner the better you can have that check in your hand than to use appropriately for you, Jesse, to make the improvements or install the drapes, landscaping and plants to your satisfaction. Sound good?
Yes.
So do we say about a 1-week period of time, paperwork's all done today, and that this could be all wrapped up and items delivered within 1 week.
Yeah, as long as somebody checks with me on my availability, because again, I'm going to play the, delivery person here and take care of this for Jesse.
Well, let me ask, are you fairly available from today and the next week to be able to find a time slot to accommodate that? Does that your schedule look okay, Nancy?
And let me check real quick. I think it is. Yeah, actually it is. It's good. Looking good.
And Jesse, you're okay with having the drapes and everything delivered to Nancy rather than having any contact with the seller?
Yeah,
Okay.
I would have no further contact. Appreciate
This way
her
it's
stuff.
over today and we just have it done with.
And is the cashier's check acceptable then?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So we'll have Jennifer and Anthony wrap up the details. We'll put a timeline to this. You'll have a draft settlement agreement, possibly this afternoon, if not this afternoon, tomorrow. Under those terms that, again, the drapes are to be returned with all the hardware and a cashier's check for $10,000 made out to the buyer, Jesse as the buyer, and all those to be delivered to Nancy at a mutually agreed upon time in the next 7 days.
That
Yeah.
works.
Okay. Great. Knowing that the paperwork that we use is the standard paperwork used to resolve all these mediations and all the paragraphs and the legalese that are in there. Of course, it's important that you read through it and evaluate it yourself, but nothing special has been created for this mediation other than the specific terms that the parties agreed to. Make sense? And certainly any other questions about that paperwork, you guys can chit chat with Anthony and Jennifer. But we certainly need to pop back as well and talk to Russ and let him know that you accepted his proposal and with the 7 days on how we're going to get it done. Okay?
Okay.
That's good.
Okay.
All right. So, welcome back, Russ. Thanks so much for your generous offer on your proposal to them. And after a bit of going back and forth, other than some little slight fine tuning, the buyer's willing to accept your proposal of the return of the drapes and the hardware, you not installing them, and accepting a cashier's check for $10,000 to cover any of the rest of the potted plant landscape issue as you're proposed. So that's great news. That is great news. That's
Okay.
great news. So there's going to be a bunch of paperwork to do that Jennifer and Anthony will put together. The other slight caveats on it, we're going to make arrangements, as long as this is okay with you, that Nancy, the buyer's agent, is going to be the go-between. So making arrangements for you or your wife to deliver the drapes and hardware to Nancy, the agent, as well as the cashier's check to Nancy, the agent, within 7 days. Is that doable for you
Yeah,
and your schedule
not a
within
problem. We
7
can take care
days?
of it. Yep. 7
Okay.
days.
And so those are the terms. That's all acceptable to you?
Yes.
Have it wrapped up? Okay.
Yes. Yeah, be done
All
with
right.
this.
All right. Congratulations. I think that's really great news, Russ. Really,
Yep.
really great news and should be a huge relief. So Anthony and Jennifer will prepare that paperwork. It's standard paperwork that we use for all the mediation and the settlement agreements. There's lots of caveats and releases in it. So it's not something other than specific terms that's been created for you and this mediation. But it's certainly important. It's a legal document, enforceable document, an important document based on the other things Chris mentioned as well. The terms of the agreement, the settlement, the release, the non-disparaging, confidentiality. The point is to get the paperwork done, read through it, ask Anthony or Jennifer any questions that you have about that, be able to sign it and get it done. And we've kind of detailed the exact delivery date and time needs to be determined by you coordinating it with Nancy, which
Okay.
Jennifer and Anthony will accommodate that. And Nancy said that she has the time really available within this next 7 days to make some windows available to really get it wrapped up. And that's the great news for all of you. Sound good?
Appreciate it. Yes, I do appreciate everything you guys have done. Thank you.
Awesome. Chris, any final wrap up?
I know it doesn't feel good right now, because I don't think that you did anything intentionally malicious, right? I know that you had communication with the agent who said didn't think it'd be a problem, but it'll feel better tomorrow, right? And to be done with it and to move on with your life, at least it puts it behind you. So
And nobody wants to spend money like this, and nobody wants to go through all these kind of travels and hoops. But the truth of the matter is that it's better to be done, move on, and get on with. Both of us can get on with our lives.
right, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. Good.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Russ.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you. Welcome back again. The great news is for those additional details, we were really able to tie those down with Russ. So he's in full agreement with the terms that we've agreed on. To be very clear, it's the delivery of the drapes and the hardware. He said he is available within the next week, Nancy, to make an appointment with you to get that done, for he or his wife to deliver that to you, along with the cashier's check made payable to the buyer, Jesse, and that he's willing and able to get that done within the next 7 days. So that's all great news, all really great news. I congratulate you guys and Jesse on you being reasonable. It may not feel great because now you've got more work to do, but it's got to feel great to have it resolved and know this is the end, get all the paperwork done, get your drapes and get a check. Agreed?
Yeah, I'm just glad to move on.
Good.
Great news.
Yeah.
Thanks for being so reasonable.
Good decision.
So I think that's a wrap up, other than you guys are going to work through the details through professional standards department and all that paperwork.
Okay.
Great job. Good
Good
job.
to go?
You and I will talk
Thank
about
you.
that timing and when to get it to you and everything. So
Okay.
yeah, we'll work through that.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you
Thank
all.
you guys.
Thank you
Thank
for your
you.
time.
Hope you enjoy your new home.
Thanks.